My name is James. I'm writing this because enough time has passed, and I'm finally ready to talk about what happened that awful night on Halloween in 2012. A night carved into my memory, like a twisted jack-o'-lantern. For 13 years, it's haunted me. And honestly, I'm too tired to carry that weight anymore. Not that you'll believe what I'm about to tell you. Hell, there was a time I wouldn't have believed it myself. Most small towns have a local legend, a story meant to keep kids out of the woods after dark. My town's legend was the tale of the Tattered Man. According to the story, years ago a cruel man murdered a Haitian seamstress in a fit of rage. As she lay dying, she clutched a square of cloth, soaked in her own blood. She looked at it, pointed a trembling finger at him, and whispered her final words in defiance. "This is you." The next morning, the man was found dead in the woods by 2 police officers. His skin had been perfectly removed, cut into dozens of small, square patches. They say her curse gave those patches a life of their own. Now, a swarm of sentient, fleshy squares haunt the woods, each one with a tiny, hungry mouth. They hunt together, swarming their victims, biting and latching on until they completely envelop them. The victim dies in shock, consumed, becoming the next host. When you see the Tattered Man walking, you're not looking at a man at all. You're looking at the most recent victim, a hollowed-out body wearing a patchwork suit of living, breathing flesh. To see him is to know that someone has just died and that you're next. Everyone in town knew the story. We all laughed about it at least once. Believing in the Tattered Man was seen as childish, kind of like believing in vampires and zombies or Santa Claus. I used to mock the people who claimed they'd seen him. That is, until that damned Halloween night in 2012. To properly explain what happened that night, you'd have to have known Leo. Leo and I were inseparable since middle school. Leo was the funniest kid I had ever met. He could own any conversation by turning it into a stand-up routine, like the time he gave a report while doing the chicken gag from Super Troopers, and GMO foods are destroying your health, right meow. We were both fans of the X-Files. While I watched for entertainment, Leo was taking notes, developing stats for the creatures, and planning how hard it would be to find proof of their existence. This ritual, especially our X-Files marathon on Halloween, became a tradition. That is until the one year we didn't chill in his room ripping bongs and watching X-Files. And I've spent every day since regretting that decision. It was the summer of 2012 when Leo told me he saw the Tattered Man for the first time. I thought it was a joke. He'd always dismissed the Tattered Man, saying, "It's no Jersey Devil or Mothman." But this time he was serious. He called me frantically and invited me over. When I walked into his apartment, I could have sworn there had been an actual fire by how cloudy it was. The TV was off, which wasn't like Leo. I only found him because I saw the orange glow of 4 lit blunts in his mouth, like a Halloween-themed Audi logo. When I asked him why it was so smoky, it was far too smoky for a few blunts. He pulled the blunts out, smiled crookedly with eyes that looked demonically red, and said, "It was way more than 4 blunts." I laughed so hard at this that his house got me high. When Leo suddenly stopped laughing, I knew the joke was over. He looked at me in a deadpan way and told me that during his free period, he went exploring the woods we avoided as children, and he swore he saw the Tattered Man stumbling around. He said the smell coming off of it was so disgusting. He believes it's as old as the legend suggests. He asked me if I believed him, and I told him I did, but deep down I thought he was full of shit. He then looked at me with complete sincerity. "Bro, I know all of the stats. I can study this thing. I think this Halloween, instead of watching the X-Files again, you and I should try and hunt down the Tattered Man, and if we can't catch him, at least get solid evidence of his existence." What kind of skeptic turns down chasing a monster with their best friend? At the time, I didn't think it could be dangerous. In my mind, chasing shadows was a fun new twist on a tradition. The next 4 months were a blur of classes and preparation. We didn't watch the X-Files anymore. We studied the Tattered Man, getting high while devising battle plans, armor, and weapons. We spent so much time on the hunt that we both fell behind in classes. I felt the need to help him. These were some of the best days of my life, a bittersweet memory considering what happened next. On Halloween, Leo wanted to start early. It was bright and sunny when we first got to the woods. We walked the perimeter, scouting and setting traps, stopping only for sandwiches and a joint. We watched over each other as we smoked, getting fake scared and having an absolute blast. It was getting dark the first time Leo told me he saw it, but I didn't see anything. I was sure he was trying to prank me. After the third or fourth time, I looked up to his flashlight beaming at nothing but trees. I stopped looking up when he said he saw it. I was getting increasingly irritated, certain we were going to leave empty-handed. If I could have seen it once, just one of the times that he saw it, we wouldn't have even been in the woods anymore. When Leo told me he saw it again, I snapped. You know, it's pretty fucked up that we made this armor and all of these plans just to get out here, and the whole time, it's just you trying to scare me. I regretted it as soon as I said it, and I know I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life, because it's the last thing I ever got to say to Leo. At least, I'm pretty sure it's the last thing he ever heard me say. I could tell by the look he gave me that he not only thought I was an asshole, but he knew I didn't believe him, that I had never believed him. He said, "I'll prove it to you, asshole. I think it's stuck in one of my traps. Follow me," and walked off. I followed, but only because I wanted to apologize. I was trailing behind him when I caught a whiff of the most disgusting smell I'd ever smelled, like rotting meat forgotten for a year. I yelled up to him, and as he turned toward me, I expected to see a face full of contempt, but what I saw in his eyes was sheer terror as he screamed at me to run. Then, I felt a pain rush through my arm. It felt like my whole arm had been hit by a hammer that was driving a truck before a tiny mouth tore into my skin. I looked down and saw a squirming slab of rotten flesh ripping through my armor and boring into my arm. I ran screaming toward Leo, ripping the nasty square of meat off my arm. As I passed him, I saw that he wasn't running. He was preparing his camera. I turned around just in time to see the camera flash, which illuminated the monstrous flying swarm of meat that was the tattered man. Leo was right. He had finally gotten his proof, but it cost him everything. I watched, unable to move, as the tattered man tore into Leo. His screams will haunt me for the rest of my life. I watched as the swarm covered Leo entirely. To my horror, it walked straight by me, using his body. It was content with him, so it ignored me completely as I stood locked in fear like a deer in headlights. As I watched the tattered man unnaturally jerk past me, I noticed Leo's camera still swaying on his neck. I decided far too late that it was time to act. I noticed one of Leo's weapons on the ground, a super soaker full of acid, marked lethal. I sprayed the monster with it from behind, but other than a sizzling sound, it had no effect. I sprayed at it until the gun was dry, but nothing I did could save Leo. I felt so defeated. Leo and I came to the woods that day to hunt the tattered man, but the tattered man ended up hunting us both. I called the police, but as I was about to explain everything, I realized how it sounded. I told them he was lost. A search party was launched, and I even went with them, secretly hoping we would find the tattered man as a group and somehow overpower it. We never did. For a while after, life was unbearable, hearing all the theories about what people think happened to Leo. They all hurt because no matter how crazy the theories were, I knew what happened and knew nobody would ever believe me. A few years after it happened, I realized that not every year, but once in a while on Halloween night at around 4 or 5 p.m., if I flick on the X-Files by a window, I might catch a short glimpse of the tattered man multiple times I've seen him out there, watching the X-Files with me. Leo was always a good friend, and I guess even in death, he still is. I'm writing this down because I think it will make the next part easier. Tonight is Halloween night, and I've had X-Files on for hours. I didn't feel his presence at all today, but I just caught a whiff of the worst smell I've ever smelled in my life, that rotting meat scent coming from right outside my window. I think I'm finally ready to step outside. You still listening? Good, because I need you to understand how it all got twisted up in my head. How a dumb dare turned into a ritual. How a joke turned into a scream I can't stop hearing. Don't expect a neat arc. This isn't a movie. This is me poking the wound with my tongue because it aches less if I keep it moving. Leo didn't come out of nowhere with monsters. He earned them. The first time I met him, he was halfway under a vending machine in the cafeteria, fishing for his stuck Snickers with a ruler, smirking at a teacher saying, "I'm conducting a physics experiment, sir." That was Leo. If there was a rule, he'd wiggle it until it squeaked. If there was a story, he'd yank the thread till the whole sweater came apart and he'd where the yarn is a wig. He made me brave in that cheap, teenage way where you confuse adrenaline with proof you won't die. He used to keep a notebook with the words "Field Guide" burned into the cover with a lighter. I remember the smell of cheap Bic plastic curling under the flame, the way he hissed at the smoke because he'd singe his finger. Inside, he had these ugly, blocky sketches, a long-armed shadow for the rake, a question mark with deer legs labeled Wendigo, and a boxy figure patchwork with little squares, the tattered man, under it. Eat you piece by piece to wear your stupid face. Speed unknown. Hunger constant. Smell. Haut und penis. We'd argue about the stats like idiots arguing about a video game. Armor class, I'd say, and he'd snort, depends what it eats. Farmers have good boots. The summer of 2012 was hot enough to make the asphalt shine. I remember sweat under my shirt like a second, stickier shirt. I remember fans clicking in windows and the taste of hose water and how my lungs would get that peppery feeling after we'd laughed too hard. Leo swore he'd seen it in June, middle of the day, shadows short like the trees were embarrassed. We were seniors in waiting. Everything felt like a prank God had set up, the last summer before we were supposed to get serious. He dragged me to the library, and we read newspapers on microfilm until my eyes turned into buzzing flies. "Look," he said, tapping an article with a pencil eraser. 1964. Man found skinned in Grove. Police baffled. Another one. 1981. Hunter disappears. Bloodied clothes recovered. A Halloween 1995 clipping. Teenagers report patchwork man near old footbridge. The paper had that baked smell, old sugar in the fibers. He was shaking, not from fear, but because he loves a puzzle, loves when the world cracks and light leaks through. "You see the cadence?" he said. "It pops during fall. Harvest. Sowing season. We built armor in the stupidest way two broke kids could. We cut up leather belts from Goodwill, duct-taped aluminum cookie sheets to hoodies, threaded fishing line across our sleeves like we were making budget chainmail. Leo had this proud, ugly chest plate built from thrift store license plates. In Ohio, a bicentennial, two farmer-friendly county plates we thought were ironic. We tested the acid super soaker in the alley behind his building, and the stream chewed a stripe down the brick as if a slug had kissed it. The air smelled like old batteries. We hacked together a head net from a screen and a baseball cap. Leo wore it in front of the mirror and did a reporter voice. On tonight's program, two local boys humiliate themselves in the name of science. We weren't just playing. We were trying to be careful in the way kids try to be careful. It's still reckless because you can't imagine the scale of pain. He had a folding map with circles and little pencil skulls and notes like seen by Mr. Tully 1990, drunk, and nurses smell like freezer burn plus coins. He wrote down times the legend said it moved. Dusk, drier weeks, after storms, when the woods threw off a rot-sweet perfume. He made trap snares with twine. He cut strips of flypaper and hung them between trees like invisible tongues. We tested one with a slice of deli ham. It clung wet to the glue, and when we peeled it off, it left a greasy skin. We argued about whether to bring a gun. Neither of us had one. That's the truth. Leo said guns never helped in the stories. The squares were too small, bullets were too big. He said acid, heat, salt, blades, sound. I thought sound was bullshit until he clanged a metal bowl with a wrench, and we both flinched because it felt like an ice pick went through our teeth. Imagine 1,000 mouths with tiny teeth, Leo said. Eyes lit up. Imagine that ringing their fillings. There's a pattern to how memory buckles. The day of Halloween is broken into sensory scraps. The sandwich was bologna and yellow mustard eaten in the trunk of his Corolla because the ground was damp. The bread stuck to my molars. My palms smelled like gasoline from the leaky extra can. Leo's lighter had a skull sticker, and he kept flicking it open and closed until I snapped, "You'll run the damn thing out." He grinned and stole mine. We set the first trap by the footbridge the old newspaper had mentioned. The creek below made that shallow, chuckling sound like somebody laughing the wrong way. He anchored the snare to a root that had pushed the dirt up like a knuckle. "If it's smart," he said, "it won't step in this. But if it's hungry, maybe it will." He dusted the path with flour so we could see tracks. The flour puffed up in a cloud, and I got it up my nose and sneezed twice, loud as shotguns. We were happy. That's the rancid thing. We were stupid and happy. We were making each other brave. He kept slipping on the leaves and throwing his arms out like a cartoon. I called him Bambi, and he bowed like he was on stage. Squirrels chittered, and we kept going, layering our nerves with jokes until there was a net thick enough to catch the fear. It almost worked. The first time he said, "There," and shot his flashlight at a tangle of saplings, I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. "It's not funny if you do it every 10 minutes, I said. He didn't crack. His face was a long white egg in the beam. "No, seriously," he said, and there was something raw in his whisper, a baby bird tremble. It moved sideways. We stood there listening to our own coats hiss and whisper as we breathed. Wind moved the branches. Nothing else did. He kept seeing it, and I kept not seeing it. That's how we got mean. That's real friendship, too. You know where to stick the blade. "You're as high as outer space," I said. "Maybe the Audi logo smoked the rest of your brain." He stared at me for a long second, like he was trying to decide whether to say the thing he didn't want to say. He said it anyway. "I haven't smoked today." That shut me up for a beat. Then I blurted that awful line about plans and armor and scaring me. And I swear to God, the way he pulled his mouth tight looked like he was pulling a zipper over a wound. He stormed ahead. I followed because that's what I always did, because that's what cowards do when they love somebody brave. And then the smell came rolling toward us like a wall. You don't understand until it hits your soft palate. It's sweet the way rot is sweet, but metallic like you licked a battery. It has temperature. It's warm in your nose, but cold in your throat. It made my jaw ache. It made a string of spit hang off my lip because my body couldn't figure out whether to swallow or gag. "Leo," I said, voice cracking like a middle schooler's. "Leo, hey." He turned and his eyes were wrong. Too wide, too shiny, but focused. He screamed, "Run," and I didn't. I rooted like a moron. I looked around for the shape I'd been telling him wasn't there, and all I saw was dark leaf shadows and our breath like smoke. The bite wasn't a bite like a dog. It was a crowd of pinpricks and then a tearing. Imagine something the size of your palm, flexing with purpose. Imagine it's slick with somebody else's old blood, and it's hungry in a way that feels personal. The thing hit my forearm and punched through the duct tape and the hoodie, and then it chewed. Not fast, methodical, like it had cheeks and spit and a preference. My brain threw up white sparks and something left my mouth, a sound I've never made before or since. I kicked at my own arm like I could kick away a sunburn. I got my fingers under the edge of it and felt it shiver, the way raw meat twitches when you drop in a hot pan. I ripped and it came away in my hand, alive and stupid and furious, and I threw it and heard it patter against leaves and instantly start whispering back toward me. Leo didn't run. The bastard brought up his camera because that's who he was. The flash went off and the woods became a photo negative for an eyelash of a second. Every tree was a bone. Every leaf was a vein. And in the middle of that fake daylight was the thing, not in a shape I could sketch, but in a geography I could feel, a flurry, a murmuration of squares of meat with lipless mouths, pieces of somebody. The flash charge whined, and it popped again, and the thing surged as if insulted. It hit him like hail. I stopped moving because I couldn't believe it. There are these ridiculous little rules deep in you. Boys don't cry during fights. Bones should be inside. Your friend can't be erased by something that looks like a butcher's nightmare. I watched him go down on one knee. I saw his hands working fast like he was trying to slip out of a sweater that was too tight. The squares took him. They lapped up the sound he made. That's what haunts me. How quiet it got. Not movie quiet. The kind where you hear your own blood tick in your ears like a wristwatch you forgot to take off. I grabbed for anything. The Super Soaker lay there, neon and childish, and labeled in Leo's cramped letters. Lethal. I pumped it until my shoulder clicked and let the acid stream hiss into the hunched patchwork. Sections of it blistered, the way bacon blisters if you forget in the pan. The smell went from rot to black bananas to something that lives under a sink. It wormed faster, cascading away from the spray and then reconverging on him, reorganizing by some ugly quorum. I emptied the tank. It kept walking. Walking is too generous. It jerked like it was learning. The suit it wore, my friend, been in places bodies don't bend, because it was a suggestion of a man, a puppet, a claim staked in meat. Leo's camera strap had slid up under his chin. The camera swung against his ribs with this awful domestic cluck, and I thought, absurdly, that's going to bruise. We make small, dumb thoughts like we put them between us and the awful thing. It helps you not scream yourself inside out. I didn't follow it. I know that's another sin on my ledger. I called 911 with my hands shaking so hard the screen made a field of stars. My friend got lost, I said, because the truth sounded like I was the murderer. The dispatcher's voice had that hard candy glaze. Practice concern. What's your location? I looked at the map we'd folded in my pocket, and it made no sense. I said, by the bridge, the old bridge, and she said, we'll send a unit. After I hung up, I sat down in the leaves and looked at blood on my sleeve. It was a smoky pink under the flashlight. It smelled like the ghost of iron. The search party stories are probably already in your head. Men in vests, headlamps like fireflies everywhere, dogs with neon bandanas pulling at leashes, people calling Leo, the way you call a dog when you've already decided it won't come. I walked with Mr. Tully, who'd once told me he saw the thing by the bridge when he was drunk, and he kept saying he's a smart kid, as if it was a prayer you could cast like a net. A woman in a nurse's scrubs handed me a bottle of water, and I held it like a prop because drinking felt like insulting the air. At one point, a deputy told me to hold still so he could look at my arm. He pulled back the tape and hissed air through his teeth. "What the hell did that?" he said. And I said, "Thorns." And he looked at me like I'd spit on his shoe. 2 days later, a vigil. Candles in little glass jars that made our faces look like we were underwater. A table with poster boards and printed photos of Leo with his arms around people at parties, in ripped jeans and in a tux that didn't fit right for prom. A girl I barely knew hugged me, and I felt her ribs like a xylophone, and she said, "I'm so sorry." And I nodded and excused myself and threw up behind the school over a patch of dead grass. The rumor started that day because rumor is a way a town tries to knit its skin over a hole. He ran away. He owed somebody money. He got into a car with a man. He wanted to start over. He staged it to mess with us. He's in Florida. He's in Portland. He's at a commune. He's dead and I did it. That one came in hard whispers in the grocery store when I reached for bananas, and 2 moms pretended to compare brands of cereal and looked at me like I was a knife someone left on the floor. My mother asked me to talk to Father Brendan. I lasted through a third of a Hail Mary, and then I stood up and left, and she didn't stop me. That's how you know your mom knows your soul is a house with a busted window. She doesn't even try to tape plastic over it. She just stands in the doorway and shivers. Cops came to my house 3 times. The first 2 were polite. The third time, Detective Holloway, who chewed watermelon gum like it had wronged him, asked me if he could see the woods again, and I said no. He said, "You think I can't get a warrant?" I said, "For what?" And he said, "For your attitude." And that was so dumb I almost laughed, and then I didn't because he didn't mean it as a joke. He made me draw a map of where we went. I did a shitty job because my hand kept cramping and the paper kept sweating under my palm. He asked me why there was acid in a water gun. I said we were testing traps for raccoons, and he said, "Don't lie to me when I'm in your living room." And I said, "Don't sit on my couch with your muddy pants." And my mother sucked air hard enough to whistle. He left without apologizing, because that's a thing some men don't do. Leo's mother didn't scream at me. That was worse. She touched my face and said, "You were his brother." And the way she said felt like a nail driven in just below my sternum. I brought her soup in Tupperware, and it sat in her fridge for 3 months, unlidded, the surface skinned over like paint. When I finally took it out and dumped it, it made a wet sound, bloop, and I had to sit down on the yellow linoleum because the sound reminded me of the way the squares plopped when they hit leaves. I didn't go back to the woods for a year. When I did, it was spring, damp as bread. I told myself I was going to leave something for Leo. A bottle cap, his favorite stupid thing to flick at me. But I was there because part of me was waiting for the smell. I stood by the bridge and said his name soft like I didn't want to wake somebody. And I heard nothing but a frog advertising his loneliness. I went home and watched the X-Files out of habit. The window next to the TV was a rectangle of night. At 4:32 p.m., I remember the clock because it beeped with a half-dead sound. The smell rolled in. It's faint the first time, like the ghost of a penny, like a rusty nail held under your nose. I turned the volume up. Mulder said something sardonic. Scully rolled her eyes. A shape outside the window was just the idea of a shape, the way your brain completes outlines when it doesn't have enough information. I pressed my forehead to the glass, and fog bloomed around my skin. No one was there. I laughed, and it sounded like a cough. Then something moved, a small, wrong twitch like a shoulder adjusting that didn't belong to a person. The second year, it wasn't faint. It pressed its stink right up to the screen as if it could see what I was watching and wanted it. I watched the reflection in the window because looking right at him felt like daring lightning. The reflection made it easier because I could pretend I wasn't seeing him. I saw the head tilt, puppet quick, the mouth, Leo's mouth, open, but the shape underneath didn't match the bones. The patchwork lay smoother than I remembered, like it had learned to be better skin. I whispered, "Leo?" And the thing cocked its head precisely the way Leo used to when he didn't hear me the first time, but thought he might have. Then it slid out of view, legs moving in a cadence my stomach knew, but my eyes hated. That's how the ritual got ugly. Some Halloweens I didn't see it. Some I got nothing but a whiff. One year I turned the TV up too loud, and the neighbor pounded the wall and yelled, "For Christ's sake!" And I nearly sobbed because the word were normal, and normal hurt. Another year I fell asleep on the couch and woke up to my screen showing static. My nose burned like I'd huffed bleach by mistake. I turned my head, and the reflection in the blank TV showed something in the window behind me, tall and wrong and patient. I didn't move for 5 full minutes. That's not an estimate. I counted breaths like they were beads. On breath number 260, I said out loud, "I'm sorry." My voice made it flinch, and it drew away like a tide. I told myself I would find the camera. That's what guilt does. It hands you a task you can't do, but it feels holy to try. I went back again the 4th Halloween with a shovel and a headlamp and a pair of rubber gloves I stole from the grocery store. It had rained the day before, and the dirt was black cake. I dug where I thought we'd been. The shovel made this cheap metal ping every time it hit a rock, and I kept thinking, that's its teeth. I found a soda can, an old bullet shell, a lump of wax paper, a dog collar with the name Buzz on a tag. No camera. I was about to give up when I saw a sliver of nylon strap snarled in a root like an earthworm. I pulled, and the strap came up slick with centuries of rot. The camera was gone, or deeper, or the woods had eaten it. I sat in the hole with mud on my knees and said, "Okay," and it wasn't okay, but the word left my mouth and floated up and away like the steam from my breath. I tried therapy. I lasted 3 sessions. The therapist had a clock that clicked loud enough to change my heart rate. She wrote things down in a tidy notebook, and every scratch sounded like a nail on a plate. "It must be hard," she said, which is something people say when they want you to keep producing your pain as if it's their job to inventory it. I said, "Sometimes I see him." She put her pen down like you put a cigarette down when a cop walks by. In what way? She said in a tone like a clean towel. I said, in the window when the X-Files is on, and she nodded slow like she wanted me to hear the gears. She suggested I stop watching the X-Files. I didn't go back. That's like telling a drowning man to stop noticing water. I dated a girl named Val for a while. The first time she spent the night near Halloween, she woke me up with a hand on my chest. You were talking in your sleep, she said. You said, not now. I lied and told her I have weird dreams around holidays. She asked if I would go to a costume party. I said no. She asked why. I said I hate strangers in masks. That wasn't really it, but it was close enough to live next door. We broke up because I kept checking the window during movies and because I flinched when she touched my arm where the scar is. Sometimes she texts on Halloween, stay safe. She doesn't know from what. I text back, you too. Under all the real life crap, the bills, the coughing, the way my knee pops now when it rains, there's the legend. I hate that this part comes out like research, but it matters because it showed me the seam. Haitian seamstress. People said she sewed dresses for girls in town cheap because she wanted them to feel beautiful. People said the man was white and drunk and owed her and didn't like the way she looked him in the eye. People said she kept a square of cloth in her pocket with bits of her past folded in, a tradition from home. People said voodoo like it was a punchline and not a word with a history and a shape. I found her name once, maybe Marie or Maris or Mara. Something with an M, something soft. I held that name in my mouth for a long time like a seed I didn't know whether to plant or spit. You want to know if I've tried to burn the woods? Yeah, that thought comes like a fever. Fire makes things clean. I bought gas. I walked out there in late October when the leaves were crisp, and I poured a circle and I held a match. I stood there smelling gasoline and got hit with the same metallic note, layered with something decaying that had opinions. I tossed the match. The flame took for a second, orange like the insides of pumpkins, and then it guttered as if the woods were greasy with something that didn't like fire. That's not science. That's just how it looked. I stamped the match and went home and scrubbed my hands with lemon dish soap until the backs were raw. There's a thing no one tells you about grief. It eats time. You look up and realize you've lost whole hours to staring at a spot where the paint is chipped because your brain replayed the same 30 seconds of your life on a loop. The loop that hurts the worst is not the scream. It's before that. It's me saying the mean thing and his mouth doing that zipper thing. I think if I had shut up, if I had just said, okay, I believe you, like I should have said every time, would he have slowed down? Would I have kept him in arm's reach? Would that swarm have chosen me because I was closer? Would any of that physics have mattered to a curse that feeds like a family? At the grocery store 2 Halloweens ago, I heard 2 boys behind me at the freezer aisle whispering about a video. It's this cryptid, one said, like a man made of skin squares. The other said, bro, that's from here. I turned like somebody had snapped their fingers in front of my eyes and said, where did you see that? They had that teenage look like they were about to be yelled at for being loud in a quiet place. Tick-tock, the taller one mumbled. I said, do you have the link? My voice came out too eager. They exchanged a glance. The taller one shrugged and shoved his phone at me. The video was 15 seconds, shot at night, blurry as a dream, somebody laughing in the background, somebody whispering dude, and a shape moving wrong across a yard 2 streets over from mine. The comments were the usual bullshit. Fake. CGI. Nice try. The account was private. I handed the phone back and said, be careful. The shorter one rolled his eyes so hard you could hear it and said, okay, Dad. I almost grabbed his arm. I didn't. This is the part where some narrator tells you about the rules they've learned. I don't have rules. I have hunches I'm too scared to test. It likes Halloween. It likes late afternoon when the light gets old and everything is the color of nicotine. It likes the X-Files, or Leo does, or the thing wearing Leo does, or the squares remember the warm hum of our dumb ritual. I don't think it's a coincidence that sometimes I smell it when Scully says Mulder like she's got his name folded into a question. I think the tattered man eats habits as much as it eats skin. It found our tradition and put it on. That's a story. That's how stories live. You wear them. Tonight the show has been running since lunch. I made grilled cheese and burned it on purpose because I think Leo would have laughed at that awful char. I took 2 bites and threw it in the sink and watched the butter congeal. At 4:07 p.m., the house made the settling noise old houses make, pipes knocking like somebody in the basement was asking to come up. I told myself it was the pipes because lying is a coat you put on when the wind goes mean. At 4:18 p.m., I got the first whiff. I stood up and the couch squealed, old springs shimmying. My knees cracked, that dull popcorn sound. Mulder was saying something about belief, which is annoying because he's always right in the way that doesn't help. I turned the volume down so I could hear the outside and immediately regretted it because I could hear the outside. Dry leaves, a car 3 streets over, a kid yelling "Mom," like he wasn't scared yet, and the faint, wet whisper of something that shouldn't make a sound because it shouldn't move. The window is the same window as always. The glass is wavy if you catch it from the side because this house is old enough to remember gaslight. My reflection looked tired in it. That's fine. I am tired. Behind my reflection was my living room, with the mug I chipped on the coffee table and the spider plant that keeps getting weird brown tips no matter what I do. The reflection is a way to look without looking like you're looking. You know that trick. You use it in trains to check if the guy 3 seats down is staring. You use it to make ghosts wait their turn. He was there. I know he isn't right anymore, but the word lodges and won't budge. He stands too close to the siding, closer than people do, because people have a sense of their own borders, and this thing eats borders. The smell hit harder, 1-2 with a taste like copper and spoiled milk. The patchwork looked better than the first year and worse than a human. It flexed and the seams moved, not random but not synced like muscle. More like a school of fish pretending to be one fish. The head tilted, the mouth opened and held there like sound was thinking about coming out and then changed its mind. The eyes, I can't do this. They're not his eyes. They're arrangements. But in arrangements you can see old patterns. His eyelids had the same little twitch they used to have when he lied. "Leo," I said. Not loud, not whisper. The just right tone you use when you greet someone who might be your friend or might be a cop. He moved his head in the same short arc inside. The show's theme rose, that whistle that makes your childhood climb up your spine and crouch there. Back in the summer, in that research fugue, we found a detail that hooked under my fingernail and never came out. One of the early articles said the seamstress, Maris, I'm going to pick that, had stitched her own talisman to carry the names of her dead. Not words exactly, scraps, threads from her mother's apron, from the hem of a dress her sister wore the day they left, from the cloth she'd used to wrap her baby. She'd kept those little squares in a square, sewn together, a piece of past that could be touched and fed. She told someone, a neighbor, a priest. The article was vague, that she didn't want to be alone in a place where people made stories with their mouths and didn't keep them in their pockets. When the man killed her and she said, "This is you," it wasn't just a curse, it was an evaluation. She'd made him into the thing he was and the thing he deserved. And the thing eats because stories eat. You need to know why I opened the door after all these years of letting it stand between us like a sheet. It isn't brave. Don't pin a medal on it. I can't bear the smell of it filling my house like smoke anymore. I can't bear the way my TV shows me my own face shiny with sweat, with that scared sheen, while I pretend I'm safe inside air I can control. And I can't bear that the closest I get to speaking to my best friend is talking to a suit with his shape. The handle is cool. The metal takes your heat, always, no matter the season. The hinge squeals because I never oil it. The sound makes me wince, and the thing flinches the way animals do when they hear violins. The air outside touches my face, and it's colder than I thought it would be. That feels like betrayal. Weathermen are liars. The smell blows in like a guest who didn't take his shoes off. I gag and swallow it. I step onto the porch. A neighbor down the street is fiddling with a skeleton decoration that's tangled in a bush. He swears under his breath and then Because he thinks no one is listening, he says, "There," in the same satisfied tone Leo used when a knot finally gave. Behind me, the TV theme swells again, then fades. Around me, the day is about to land on night, and it's the moment the color drains but the shapes stay. I can hear the square whisper. It's real. If you spread a newspaper and shook it, imagine the sound the pages might make if they had opinions. That's it, but wetter. He stands to my left. He's tall because Leo is tall. The seams on the jawline are smoother, like somebody ironed them. The neck is wrong. It goes forward, then up like it's trying on the idea of posture and doesn't trust the fit. I put my hands up so he can see they're empty because it matters to me that he not think I'm going to spray acid on him again. That's ridiculous, but it matters. I'm not here to fight, I say. I'm here to listen. The words leave my mouth like moths. I half expect them to hit the seams and stick. There's a movement inside the shape like the tide turning. It leans, which is the word I'll use because if I use steps, it places it in too tidy a category. The lean makes my lungs empty without my permission. It's close enough that the smell becomes a flavor I could chew. Under the rot, there's something like old perfume, something powdered and faint like a grandmother's dresser drawer. It's there and gone, a thread. I say, "Maris," and the seams ripple, and something behind the mouth opens and I hear, for the first time in 13 years, something like a voice. It isn't speech. It's a shiver of consonants, a click like a dog's nails on tile, a soft, low hum you feel in your molars. It's the sound of a garment being shaken out. It's the sound of two different people saying the same thing at once, then stepping on each other, then trying again. I realize with fresh nausea that every square isn't just a mouth, it's a little throat. It could talk if it agreed with itself. It could. It chooses not to. I think about the camera. I think about the flash frozen in the leaves, the one clean instant where the world lit up and said, "This is the shape of it. This is the thing." I say, I should have done this then. I should have stood. The seams on the chest lift and settle like the tide. Inside that tide, there's a stubborn, familiar rhythm. No, not familiar. Memorized. It mimics breath. The gesture is obscene. It means nothing to it and everything to me. Okay, I say. I don't know who I'm talking to. The seamstress. The swarm. My friend. Myself. The sky is darkening from the color of old teeth to the color of a bruise. Somewhere a kid laughs through plastic vampire teeth and the sound warps. I take one step down off the porch. My foot hits the first stair and the wood knocks as if answering. My weight makes the house creak and the noise seems to disturb the whole realization gathered in front of me. It stiffens. It doesn't like houses. It likes woods. It likes rooms with green light and mosquitoes. I want to ask the questions. Are you hungry? Do you remember? Does it hurt? Will you let me? The sentence doesn't finish itself because words are too neat. Instead, I do the oldest thing we know how to do, the thing we do when a dog is scared and you want it to know your shape. I put my hands out, palms up, and keep them there. My forearm scar itches like somebody's writing on it with a cold finger. I say, because Leo always dragged the joke back into the room when it got too heavy, smell has improved, man. The thing doesn't laugh, because of course it doesn't. But the seams jump in a way that means it noticed tone. Tongue gets sticky. My mouth is dry. My tongue feels like it's wearing wool. The edges of my vision flicker. I become aware of my heartbeat as if I've been carrying a separate animal in me this whole time, and now it wants out. The thing leans again. A square detaches from the shoulder like a slow coin dropping. It lands on the porch rail with a sound that should be a plop, but is too intentional to be a plop. It raises a little flap, mouth like a wound, and it sniffs. That's the only word for it. It sniffs me like it's tasting my story. I don't move. I'm past fear in the dumb way. You get past it when you can't change anything. I let it taste the air around my hands. I think about that old square the seamstress held, the one with a part of her mother stitched into it. This square is someone. It's some nameless elbow, a bit of thigh, a piece of a kid's back, a sliver of a man's calf. It's everything we are when we come apart. I imagine reaching out and picking it up like a mouse you want to save from a trap. I don't, because I'm not ready to feel it again, that live meat shiver. I just let my hands hang there and the square tests my heat. It wants inside. That's the message, quiet and absolute. The thing wants to wear me. That's the whole romance. That's how it loves. It will make a coat of me and step into town and watch TV through my eyes and wave at my neighbors with my hand and stand on my porch on Halloweens after I'm gone. It will do the old jokes with my voice and laugh at the right places. I look up. Over its shoulder, phrasing is stupid here, and past the seam-lined sky there's the old footbridge. It's too far to see, I know, but my brain drags it closer the way it drags a lover's face into focus in a crowd. I think about the flour, the stupid dust, the queasy little puffs our boots made. I think about the trap we set that didn't work because we made it for raccoons, not stories. I think about the way the acid hissed and how it only taught it to keep moving. And I think this is what changes me. I think that maybe the only thing I can give it that it hasn't figured out how to eat is permission. Okay, I say again. Okay, now I surrender. Not take me. Not now. Just okay. A word like a bench between us. The square on the rail settles. The larger body, ridiculous to use body, but my language doesn't have better, loosens. If it had shoulders, they would drop. It tilts the head, and for a nanosecond, I see Leo, for real, not projected on the shit of it, but a lens sliding into place. The mouth trying to smile and failing because the scaffolding under it doesn't match the math. I hear a sound come up from inside the patchwork, the rustle of cloth being folded. It means nothing and everything. It's as close to a thank you as I'm going to get. Behind me, in the living room, Scully says, "Mulder," again, and the wistfulness in it makes my eyes sting. The neighbor finally wins his fight with the skeleton, and it stands crooked, fake gleeful. Down the street, a car, door slams, and a dad says, "Okay, troops," and somewhere a dog starts barking like it's laughing at a joke I can't hear. The square climbs back from the rail with a grip that doesn't match fingers. The patchwork rearranges. It leans away, then turns that awful puppet grace, learning with every second to be more of a man. It heads toward the side yard that opens to the cut-through that leads to the trail that leads to the bridge. I watch it go because I owe it that. I owe him that. When it vanishes, the smell loosens, unraveling like thread. I take a breath that feels like it belongs to a different person and tastes like the first mouthful of water after you've been sick. I stand on the porch until my knees hurt and the porch boards print their ridges into my bare feet. I listen to the house ask if I'm coming back inside or if it should learn to live without me. I look at my hands and see the tremor as if it's a small animal I'm holding. I laugh once because it sounds stupid, and then I stop because I don't want to make the laugh mean anything. There's a door between us. There's always been a door between us. Would pride, bone, story. Tonight I opened it. That's what I've done. If I want a clean ending, I would have had to let it close on me. I'm not interested in clean. I'm interested in true. I step backward, one stair, then another, into the house that smells like old butter and a little like rot. I don't turn my back on the yard. I can't. I keep my eyes on the place where the patchwork vanished until my vision prickles. Inside, the theme comes up on the TV again, sweet and corny and holy. I reach back with my heel and push the door until the latch rests against the strike plate, but doesn't click. The house breathes out. I breathe in. I put my hand on the knob. This is where I'm going to stop writing for now, because I didn't write this to invent a moral or to break into a scream and freeze you there. I wrote it to loosen my chest enough to stand up and do the thing I've been rehearsing for 13 Halloweens. I'm going to walk off this porch and down the steps and cross the yard and go where it went. Maybe I'll meet my friend again, and maybe I'll meet the seamstress old anger, and maybe I'll meet the law of the woods that says everything wears everything eventually. If you never hear me again, don't make up a nice story about it. Don't say I found peace. I'm not interested in peace. I'm interested in whatever waits when you stop standing behind glass. I think I'm finally ready to step outside.